Modifiers are the workhorse of topology modification within 3D Studio Max. You have multiple ways to create various modifiers and to manipulate your topology. So here I have this object selected, and if we look at our modifier stack over here, we have a box parametric modifier, which allows me to manipulate my topology. I can apply more modifiers onto my object by going to the modifier list down here, or with the slightly more organized modifier main menu option here. So if we go to our main menu modifiers, all of our modifiers are organized out into main sections and organized this way. So our parametric deformers here, we have things like our bend deformers, which are now applied to this particular object right here. We can go ahead and manipulate our topology with these sliders. If you have multiple, if you have a modifier that you would like to remove, you can easily do so with the trash can. So with the modifier selected, we can delete it. With multiple objects selected, you can apply a particular modifier that will instance between the two objects. So if we go to modifiers, parametric again, and we'll go to bend, both of these objects kind of live within the same modifier. And if we look within the modifier itself, if we were to select the object, the modifier is italicized, which lets us know that it's an instance modifier. So if we go ahead and modify this, you can see both objects are sharing that same modifier, even though they are indeed separate objects. If you want to break an instance modifier so that it's no longer instance, you just select the modifier, and down here we can make unique, and now this modifier is no longer shared. So now if we were to go ahead into our modifier and change our settings, it's only manipulating this particular object. And if we go to the second object here and manipulate it, it's only affecting this object here. So we'll go ahead and delete this particular modifier. Modifiers do stack, and the way they evaluate, the way 3D Studio Max evaluates the modifier stack, it's from the bottom up. So if we look down here, we have the box modifier. The information that's here gets passed on to any modifier that's on top of it. So if we go ahead, and I'm going to stick with the parametric. If we go down here, I'm going to stick, if I'm in the right menu, if we stick with our parametric deformers, these are all procedural types of modifiers, meaning as I change topology below it, it will not affect the end effect. Well, it will modify the end result, but it won't hinder my my result. So in this case, I have an X amount of verts coming here in the Y, and if I go up to my bend modifier here, you get to see that the bend will happen, and if I go back to my box and change my height segments again, you get to see it's not hurting the effect. It does change the result because the information from the box goes up to the bend. And we can continue to stack these deformers. So if we go to modifier here, and let's say, let's go back to our parametric deformers, we can grab something like a twist here, and the twist modifier will take the information from our bend and then twist over here. All of our modifiers have these toggle switches, these visibility toggles. So if I were to mute my bend, we can visualize what the twist is doing on its own without this input here. You can see it's just twisting our object. We can up this and twist it all about. And with this back on, we get to see what the evaluation stack looks like. What we can actually do, we can modify the evaluation order by dragging our modifiers into a different stack order. So down here, we'll want the twist to evaluate first and then bend, and you can imagine this will result in a different effect altogether. So what's happening, it's doing the twist first, and then it's adding that twist to this bend. So it's deforming it within a uniform space, which gives us a more predictable result in this particular instance. In addition to this, we can apply more modifiers. Again, if we go to our parametric deformers, we can grab, let's say, our taper. So now this taper operator or modifier, if we go ahead and mute all of this, we get to see what our taper is doing. So we're able to taper our object. So now it tapers, and let's go ahead and add our twist. So we have our twist and our taper stacked on top of each other, and then we'll add that bend, and this is the end result that we get. For our bend, we can go ahead and bend this up a little bit. So this is a unique shape that we were able to create with simple modifiers, and it's pretty convenient to have the ability to select and modify your various modifiers. Also within this window, we've seen this make unique, and we've also had experience with deleting modifiers here. When you're working with your history, at times, as we've been doing with this particular setting, you'll go ahead and work with modifiers that are not on the top of the stack. And this button here allows you to review your end result as if you were modifying this top stack, this top modifier. So if we turn this off, so right now it's off, we will only see the result of whichever modifier that we're at. So if we're at the box, we will only see the output of what this box modifier is creating up until this point. So if we go to twist, we'll see the box modifier with the twist applied to it, and so on. So you can see how useful it would be to have this show end result on, switch to other modifiers earlier on in the stack to see what the how that affects your end result. This last button here, this is a pin stack. This allows you to keep your selection and keep your modifier window open, your modifier stack open, and select other objects. So you get to see that I'm in box 2, which is the pink object, and even though I have this red object selected. So here you get to see I have another object, and I'm able to transform another object and still visualize this particular stack. So that's what this pin stack does. Turning this off, you get to see immediately it updates my selection to box 3, which is the red selection. In addition to all of that, we can grab our modifiers and we can drag them. So here I'm dragging my taper, my bend. I'll grab my taper. I wonder if we can grab these guys. There we are. So I grab my taper and we'll grab our twist. So now I have all of the same modifiers. Those modifiers are actually copied onto this object. We just need to put them in the correct order. Essentially, the bend has to be on the top, and then we'll get a similar result. There are all types of modifiers available. We were looking at our parametric modifiers, but if we want to have access to our core topology, you're going to want to grab an edit modifier. So we'll go ahead down here, even though our edit modifiers can be found here as well, we'll go ahead and look at a different interface to create modifiers. So we'll go to edit poly. So here we have our edit poly. Now I have access to an array of components. So here I'm able to access my vertices, edges, and polygons. We have access to border and element. We can look at those at a later video. Since we're using the edit poly modifier, we actually have access to our graphite modeling tools ribbon, where we have a few selection options. So if I were to go to, let's say, ring, I'm able to select, in this instance, I have a polygon, or let's grab an edge. So if I were to grab an edge and grab my ring here, you get to see I'm able to make this selection, and we can modify this even further, grabbing loops from here, or we can grab dotted loops, which is useful. And these are things that we can look at further. In further videos, just to be exposed to the fact that we have access to these components is quite useful. So we'll grab our dot loop, or didn't look like he got it. Well, from here we can do things like bevels and such. So we'll go grab this, right click, we'll grab chamfer. So there we are. So all of those moves that I did within here, this chamfer, is stored within this one poly operator. It's not going to create, for each move, it's not going to create a new piece of topology for each section. So that bevel that I did is stored within this one modifier here. So it's really useful to go in and explore and experiment with your different modifiers and see how changing the different orders can change your result. So that's playing with history in 3D Studio Max.